Thank you for joining us today on Connect and Collaborate, where we come together each day to introduce you to our network of business and community leaders and to discuss important issues that impact business in Colorado and the region. I'm Tammy Schaefer, your on-air producer, and today I'm connecting with Jon Ekstrom of Deft Communications. And Jon, I'm so glad to have you back. We've asked Jon to help us out with a week of looking at unique partnerships. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on, Tammy. Yeah. It's always exciting to get to highlight good work going on in the community. And today, our guests in particular are two people that I adore greatly and are doing just tremendous work. We've got Melanie Ulle and Santy, co-founders of Women in Kind. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So it's funny. You're together on Women in Kind, and you founded this, and we'll get into that in the later segments, but I think it would be helpful if that's not the entirety of what you do. Is that fair to say?
Right. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you're both running your own businesses, so let's take some time and let's highlight and then go back and see where you all started connecting and what that was like. So, Gino, why don't we start with you? What's your day job? What do you do?
Well, let's see. Okay, I do a few things. I own a strategic communication firm called Executive Suite Communication.
How long has that been around?
About 5 years, yeah. It's about as old as my daughter, who is 5, and I used to be a professor, left academe, started a strategic communication firm. That's kind of how Mel and I got to work together professionally. I'm sure maybe we can talk about that down the road, but yeah, so Executive Suite Communication does a lot of strategic communication campaigns. It's been...
Types of clients you work with?
Yeah, we work with nonprofit clients. We also work with corporate clients. We help with change management communications, some personal branding and thought leadership for the Executive Suite. Then Mel and I do, of course, Women in Kind, and we'll get to tell you all about that. And then I run the Broadview Denver. So it's an online publication for the women of Denver. So...
Fantastic.
A few gigs.
So apparently you don't sleep or anything.
Yeah, and did I also mention I have a kid, a 5-year-old, a single mom, a 5-year-old kid, yeah. So
there's plenty going on.
That's right.
The Broadview, when was that founded?
Let's see, just the turn of the new year last year, so 2017, and we launched in May, and we've got some great writers and contributors and doing some really cool stuff.
I love it.
Yeah, 100%. I read it. I think it's terrific. Give us a snapshot of some of the folks who contribute to the Broadview and some of the topics they cover.
Yeah, so, and Mel and Jon, because you're great readers and good fans of it, and you're such good dude. My favorite person ever,
Thank
Mel.
you.
So feel free to also jump in, because I don't know that I always represent it, because there's so much. We do so much, and we cover so many different perspectives. So we really have this kind of social justice perspective. One of our purposes is to try to kind of shrink the community for women in Denver, and like, what's relevant to you, and what should you, if you're going to get fired up, what should you get fired up about? Right?
I guess my observation as a reader is that the thing that's really unique about the Broadview Denver is it really feels like it's a women's publication written by women and started by women. It feels different than when I read things that I feel like I'm being spoon-fed information that somebody thinks I want. This is the stuff I really legitimately do want to read.
This
Does
is
that
more,
make sense?
yeah, or more organically created, right?
Yeah.
And it feels unforced. Is that fair to say?
It does.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with you. And I would say, Jenna, that it's to your credit that I don't think there's anything like it out there.
Thank you.
So, Mel.
Have I told you today that I love you?
You just did?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'll do it one more time before after this broadcast. Perfect.
Mel, let's turn to you. You are the founder and CEO of Philanthropy Expert.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Philanthropy Expert.
So we are, I'm pretty sure this is going to be our 6th anniversary in December. So my company, we have a small little team of amazing, brilliant contributors. And our work is really focused on the giving community, both in Colorado and nationally and internationally. So clients would be universities, major hospitals,
Government agencies, corporate clients, things like that?
We have a few corporate clients on the philanthropic giving side.
Right.
Where we help them to actually come up with a giving strategy that makes sense for the company and for their employees.
Right.
And then sometimes volunteer engagement piece as well. We do a tiny bit of political work. So we represent the mayor of Denver, and we work on some of his ballot initiatives.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's fantastic. And that's actually how we met.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I was a corporate client when I was back doing my corporate gig. We got connected through someone else, and thanks to Kevin Jones for getting us together.
Yeah.
But I think he was a little bit taken aback by how quickly we hit it off and the rapport that we had, which was kind of unusual.
No.
That's what happens to everyone Mel works with. It's great. One of the reasons I love working with her.
Thank you. I think that having, when you have any kind of political or policy background, you tend to connect relatively quickly.
There's like an easy shorthand there,
Absolutely.
which is funny. So I would say your work, the two of you, have work that's related, but different from one another. And so what facilitated you all coming together initially?
Well, we both needed a place. I mean, we were friends first.
Right.
And then we needed a place to office. So we officed together, and that kind of became the creative impetus for us doing Women in Kind.
How did you initially meet, though?
We just have mutual friends.
Yeah.
And then we sort of like would see each other at parties and weddings and be like, I want to know her more.
Yeah.
I think we had like girl crushes, like friend crushes on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why aren't we connecting in a more robust way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think when we did really get to know each other, we were both kind of passionate about the same stuff, and it was always, I think you meet a cool friend when you talk at the same time all the time. And so both of you just get louder, and then you just get more emphatic, and your faces get all crazy and weird because you're so excited to talk to each other, and that's a lot. I think we scream over each other still when we talk.
So too. Yeah.
I think it's funny when you get together in a professional environment. You know, you're friends first and you have this shared sensibility, but finding an opportunity to actually do something together is really special, and we'll get into that in the next segment.
Awesome.
I think that's great where you get together and it's like, you too? You too.
Yeah.
Like we agree on all this. It's fantastic. We're talking with Melanie, Ulle, and Santy, and we're going to talk more about Women in Kind. Stay with us after the break. We have much more coming up. So much for staying with us here on Connect and Collaborate. And we're connecting with Jon Ekstrom of Deft Communications, and we're putting together, Jon, this is going to be fun, kind of
this is a good week.
Looking at unique partnerships and really finding the ways some folks in Denver are kind of meeting needs in a fantastic way.
Yeah, getting together in ways that you may not expect or may not anticipate, or doing some game-changing work.
I like that.
And for instance, Santy, Melanie, Ulle, the founders of Women in Kind, which is a co-working space here in Northeast Denver. Give us the address for that, if you would, real quick.
3899 Jackson Street.
And where can we find you on the web?
womeninkind.com.
Okay, simple enough.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by this because the three of us have all founded our own businesses. Deft Communications, Executive Suite Communication, Philanthropy Expert. But going to Women in Kind and starting a building, starting a space, that is, to me, next level and in a lot of ways unfathomable. So how did that come about for the two of you?
Let's see. What's our origin story? Let's tell them. I think our origin story
comic book movies are very popular now, and you always start with the origin story, right?
We've got a good one, I think. We were officing together. So we each had, do you want me to go?
Yeah.
Mel's looking at me like, you better tell this story. Okay. Yeah. So Mel and I both had our like little baby businesses. Hers was around a year. Mine was like a few months old. And she very kindly said, come office where I am. Like,
that's nice.
Come hang out in this office. And she made me pay her, but you know. Like,
not dumb.
Kind, not dumb.
So we officed together. We're in this room. And, you know, nice size office room, and we had both of our companies there, and they were really small at the time, so there was enough room for us, and some of it was great. Some of it was really great. Like, it was fun to go to work because you saw your friends, and you weren't solitary.
You have a very similar sensibility.
Right. We both, I think Mel is the smartest, funniest person I know, and some days she thinks the same of me.
I do think that's
okay, there you go. And I'm like poking her in the ribs.
I'm your biggest fan. Stop.
So it was fun. There's a lot of synergy between what we do. It's distinct enough that we can kind of share some work and share some clients. But then we had these similar gripes. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. The building that we were in, though it was a beautiful building, it had, the exposed brick and then nice hardwood floors, and it was an older building. And we faced sort of the age-old problem that women have in offices, which was freezing our tails off. And so it was very uncomfortable. At one point, the actual, I think, was it the internet went out?
Yeah. And the heat went out.
And the heat went out.
We're
And we
camping.
okay, we can't go to work until it's fixed.
Yeah.
But that's actually a very common complaint among women. You hear it all the time. And literally, you'd be hard pressed to find a woman who hasn't experienced, having to wear a parka in the office. It's a big problem. And basically, offices were set to a certain temperature that was 66 degrees, which is not the temperature that really jives with women's bodies.
Well, and I think it was geared more towards men wearing suits,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was for the longest time traditionally the measuring stick, right? Which I think carries additional implications to it other than just fashion, right?
Right.
Is that fair to say?
Well, I think what Mel is getting at too is when we office together, it was about basic comfort level.
Right.
It's really hard to concentrate if you're just
Freezing.
freezing, you're not comfortable. And that's the same with, there's a reason, there's whole movements
You
to
can't type when your hands are frozen.
Right.
I know.
And when kids are hungry at school, there's a reason
Right.
there's a number of organizations devoted to that issue, because you cannot learn, you cannot perform when there's just basic physiological things that aren't addressed.
Yeah, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah. So certainly, and it becomes so embedded in our environment that we're oh, this is just how it is. And so
Right.
that became, it's kind of a simple thing, but it became a bit of an impetus for Mel and I talking about what would it mean to create a space that really addressed women and really valued women enough to say, what does it mean to live in this space, to work in this space from your perspective?
Right.
So that's one component. There's
So-
other components about how women work and that kind of stuff too.
So how long ago was this that you started envisioning this? Because Women in Kind launched not that long ago.
From the time that we made the decision to the time that we opened was about 10 months?
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow. That's a
we-
short time frame to
I
me.
know.
But
We
let me
are-
just say
that's
that
so
is so me and so Jenna, because the two of us are so impatient, and
Right.
we're we're gonna start something. Let's go start it. Let's go raise the money. We raised the money way quicker than we anticipated.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's
It's a great idea.
Great idea. Right.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic idea.
It's something waiting to pop.
Yeah,
It's-
exactly.
It's one of those things that you hear and you go, why doesn't this already exist,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So we were able to raise the money really quickly. We were fortunate to find a female-owned architecture firm, and Neo Studios. We love them, and then we worked with Spectrum as our contractor. They turned around the updates to the building so quickly.
Yeah.
And so we were open, in August.
So the idea had, it had been a little years in percolation.
Sure.
But then when I think I kind of imagine it as when I proposed to Mel, I
totally.
called her and I was listen, this is what we have to do. And let's do it. And then we opened 10 months later. So
That's fantastic.
so it really did. And we were so committed to it and felt so passionate about it.
Yeah.
Wow, was it tough getting all of that together on top of your normal, regular businesses? Did it nearly kill you both?
Yeah.
Is it still nearly killing us? Yeah, we're tired, dude.
Yeah.
We're really tired.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
I can only imagine. In terms of addressing some of the things like being cold or childcare needs,
Yeah.
how did you incorporate that specifically into the design of the building?
I mean, from my perspective, it just really means how do you think of women for the first time ever as let's not just add things on as little band-aids or afterthoughts, but if you really are going to design a place for women, it means seeing them and valuing them and really understanding what is central to their experience. So that meant kind of everything about a woman's day, from like when she gets up in the morning to going to work to getting to work. So something like free parking and ample free parking was really important to us.
Certainly.
So,
and challenging in Denver.
Holy man.
Lord, right?
You
But why
are right.
specifically? Why parking?
Well, because go ahead, Mel, you talk about this because I get all fired up about
I
parking too.
do. For women, especially women with small children, it's really, really hard when you're balancing like a baby on your arm and a briefcase on the other arm and high heels and your suit, and you're trying to put your card in the meter, and it may read it the first time, maybe not the second time, and then you got to remember your stupid license plate number, and like that is death by a million paper cuts.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And we were like, no, we're not going to make it harder on women.
Yeah.
We're going to simplify. And think about how many women who will make a determination on restaurant or coffee shop or bar or whatever meeting spot just on parking.
Yeah.
And Denver, I love this city so much. We got a big problem with parking.
Yeah.
Yes.
And traffic, and so we wanted to be in a place that was it's close to Stapleton, which is a very high density of professional women and professional women with children, and so that was a key demographic for us.
Yeah.
And
A block from the light rail. Yeah. So just trying to think about how can we make it easier for women to get to us, and once they're there, how do we make things easier for them?
Well, and one thing that I think is worth bringing up here is I remember when it was like a Twitter hashtag, Yes All Women, and I spoke to my wife about that, and one of the things that we talked about was, and I know I've brought this up with the two of you, is I changed the settings on my keyless entry of my car to unlock all the doors at the same time.
Yeah.
And she said, no, you never do that.
No way, dude.
And so...
Not for ladies.
No. And so almost thinking about parking and something as what feels almost at first blush as trivial as parking, but using that almost as an existential threat.
Yeah.
In terms of, because your parking lot it both has ample space and is well lit.
Right.
I mean, that's something else that I think bears mention. It's well lit, so you can go there and feel safe and not have to worry about that before you're even getting into client concerns or business concerns.
Right.
Is that fair to characterize it that way?
Yes, I mean, you mentioned the hierarchy of needs, and you really can't, it's like basic safety, and then thinking and recognizing that safety looks different for women than it does for men. And saying, that's okay. It's not like now we have to make a big deal about all this extra stuff because
no, you're weaker. No, it's just different.
Yeah, it's just different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we built that into our whole design.
Brilliant.
What we're thinking about.
And security was a really big investment for us, and it continues to be.
Oh, I'm sure.
So
the whole building.
We have cameras. We have an alarm system. We watch the cameras.
Not in a creepy way.
Not in a creepy way, but we're paying attention. And you can't just walk into our building.
Good.
Yeah.
And you'll never be able to, because safety is so important to us.
Absolutely.
Well, you're not far from our building either, I realize. And same thing. I'm like, I'm so glad our doors all lock. You need a code to get in.
Of course.
Yeah, it's good. And especially, I mean, you mentioned the convenience of being right near the light rail station, which is great because if you have meetings downtown, then you can hop on public transit. But that also indicates access for people who may have a bad agenda.
Right.
So having those safety elements, I think, is very thoughtful in terms of your design. So, I mean,
Right.
that's really, really good. Okay, coming up in our next couple of segments, we're going to talk about launching it. We're going to talk about the reaction that you've received, some of the other cultural issues. We got a lot to talk about. It's going to be a good time.
Thanks.
More with unique partnerships with Jon Ekstrom and Mel Ulle and Jenna Santy. We will be back with more. Stay with us right after this break. For staying with us today here on Connect and Collaborate. And this week we're focusing on unique partnerships, and I'm glad to have Jon Ekstrom of Deft Communications joining us and leading this conversation.
Tammy, it's a pleasure to get to be on here. You do a tremendous job. This show features great folks from all across Denver, and the work that they're doing is just tremendous. And speaking of,
Yes.
we were talking off mic. while we were at break, Jenna and Mel, about some of the amenities and some of the things that go into Wink. And you mentioned childcare.
Yeah.
And you told me some interesting things about that. Could you share with me a little bit more?
Sure. So Women in Kind, as we've been talking about, is the first comprehensive co-working community that's really said we value women enough to see all the challenges that they face as professional women. And that means for a large chunk of that population also being moms and partners and wives. So Mel and I really looked at what does that mean and what are the challenges there. So one challenge is kids and kind of how to bring your kids into your work life in some way. In particular, we may have, all of us who have kids has some kind of way to take care of them throughout the day. They're in daycare, they're in school, or they have a nanny, but there's always those moments where that kind of falls through.
Yeah.
And if your kids are in school, then there are more in-service days than you kind of know what to do with, which is, great for some reasons, but they can kind of surprise you if your nanny could get sick or there's, whatever. There's a plethora of reasons
I
that
pretty much don't think they're ever great. I know that makes me a bad mom, but
No, they
I
were
just,
great when you were a kid, but
yeah, I just think as a parent, they're never great.
The in-service days?
or snow days or whatever. There's something that kind of throws this little
Schedule
monkey
off,
wrench
yeah.
in
There's
your operation.
any number of landmines
Totally.
is what you're describing.
So if you own your own business or if you run like a giant corporation, regardless of kind of where you are, unexpected absenteeism is a real thing that affects your bottom line.
Yeah.
And Mel and I learned as we were doing all of our market research that 3 days of unexpected absenteeism. So that means there's all the things that you've already planned for, but there's these 3 extra days that just took you by surprise, cost roughly $3,000
Yikes.
per employee who's experiencing those 3. So if you run your own business, that's a hit that you take. If you are running a larger business, that's still something that accumulates. So because women are often primarily the ones who are tasked with kind of what do you do in those situations, we really wanted to provide something that could help in those, if you need help in a pinch. So we have 2 playrooms and we offer on-site on-demand childcare. We partner with a great business called Nano. So if you come in so my kid has had a few in-service days and I'll bring her in for a few hours and at first I'll just kind of like run through some email and she can play in the rooms and she's entertained. There's like new stuff for her to do with a climbing wall.
Nice.
And then once the inevitable time hits where like she can't entertain herself anymore, then you can bring in a care provider. So you can call someone from Nano and they can kind of do some stuff with your kids and still be right there. So it's just one way to address that pain point, and a pain point that is a frustration for women and has a real economic result to it.
Yeah.
I think one of the things where we've fallen down as a culture is, and I hesitate even describing it this way, but is in monetizing our childcare.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or understanding the economic consequences of our childcare. I mean, certainly there's like a tax write-off, but to the extent that you just described it, I've never heard it explained that way. And if you can, that almost puts it in terms that people are more quick to relate to. They go, oh, childcare, that's soft, that's whatever. But no, it affects your bottom line.
Totally.
I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, and we encourage, I think that's part of how you have to learn maybe to value women in a new way it sounds a little maybe cold sometimes, but to bring it down to there is profit and loss associated with some of these things.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Since you've launched, and I want to get into what the success has been and how you view success, but what surprised you since you've been there?
I think the biggest surprise for us has been the way that our community, and one of our members refers to it as the commune, which I love. We
in a really positive way.
In a positive way.
Yeah.
Right.
We throw down for each other. And I really can't reinforce that enough. We throw down for each other. We have created an ecosystem in which we write each other into proposals. We hire each other for projects. The attorney in our building has gotten, I think, 3 clients just from the ecosystem in the building. Like, we are committed to the success of the women and men that are in that building.
So it's an
Committed.
actual community.
Absolutely.
It's not just people sharing space. And I have a little bit of experience with some co-working space, and I felt like I was just sort of siloed there. But not at Women in Kind.
Yeah.
I actually look forward to connecting with people, and that's not which is surprising because I do public relations for a living, but not something I'm always looking forward to, you know?
Right.
Like you kind of want to get your head down and get work done, which you can do there, but when you look up and connect with the people who are there, you feel great about it.
Well, the cool thing about Wink is you could turn around and see a member of Congress, you can see
Right.
a governor's candidate, or you could see somebody who's like pretty senior at one of the biggest foundations in the world. You never know who's going to walk in, but everyone is so exceptional.
Have you leaned on your networks to make that happen?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. I mean, both Jen and I do a lot of work professionally in the women's community. So we both done work for the Women's Foundation. We both done work for the Women's Leadership Foundation, Girls Athletic Leadership Schools. We have these incredible women. I mean, we have an abundance of amazing women in Denver. We are so blessed.
Yeah.
And the fact that we already had relationships with them and could just sort of like shepherd them in the door is a real blessing. And really, I don't know if we could have done it had we not had those relationships. It would have been really hard. Don't you think? To make inroads cold?
Yeah.
Well, we probably wouldn't have
it's-
had the commitment to the idea.
Right.
Well, it certainly would have been harder.
Yeah.
But one thing that I think warrants a little bit of clarification is you're not creating some elitist club either.
Oh my gosh, not at all.
No, I mean, this is not something where you have to have this status to be there, but you certainly can turn around and see a member of Congress or someone running for school board or
Yeah.
whatever it is. But if you're also starting up, it's a great place to go and meet people.
I just think it's a great, it's a place where women and men who are ambitious and committed to building a better community gravitate toward our space,
Yeah.
either as rental for events or as
Right.
members.
And
Yeah.
one of our members just said this to me. She just joined like 2 weeks ago, and I called her up to the second floor because I was having this really great conversation with another woman. And I'm like, wait, you need this expertise from this other person. She happens to be here. And I called her up and we had this
Right.
great conversation. And the woman who just joined as a new member said, this is it. This is why I'm here.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have this conversation if I was just working from my home or if I
Right.
was just at Starbucks. And that conversation led to new business for both of the women who were in the conversation. And so, I mean, it's not just about like the space and even the great amenities we have built into the space. Is what can we offer you that's
Right.
really going to help you flourish and grow professionally.
Yeah.
And Jenna says this all the time, and I totally believe it's true. You can build a really successful business from your bedroom, but you cannot build an empire. And you can't build an empire alone. You just can't.
Right.
No one ever has. So, I mean, I think it's true. And I think that we are convincing women and our male members to like throw down,
Yeah.
invest in themselves, throw down and support each other and
build something.
and some serious karma points. I mean, really, like I feel like everybody's really supporting each other
Yeah.
and they're getting supported in kind, right?
Right.
Like that was the point.
So it sounds like you're pleased with the way it's gone since launch. Is there still room for growth? Have you accomplished, presumably you haven't accomplished everything you want to accomplish.
Oh
No.
no, we're babies.
Yeah. We've got a lot to do yet, and we can tell you a little more about that.
Okay, we'll get into that in the next segment. We'll also get into, I mean, this has been largely positive, but there's got to be some detractors, right? Let's talk about that in our fourth segment.
Yes, we'll talk more with Mel Ulle and Santy from Women in Kind, and also with Jon Ekstrom from Deft Communications as we continue here on Connect and Collaborate. Stay with us. Much for listening today here on Connect and Collaborate. We are looking at unique partnerships this week with Jon Ekstrom of Deft Communications. Jon, it's so great to have you and your guests here.
Thank you, Tammy. It's a pleasure to get to do this. And you mentioned Deft Communications. I'll give a quick plug for it. It is deftcom.us. You can find us on the web. We do training, content, engagement, and get to work with lots of great people, including Mel Ulle, Santy from Women in Kind. This has been a fascinating conversation into the origin of this co-working space. We've looked back a little bit. We've looked at the present. Let's also look at the future. But before we get there, my understanding is that anytime you sort of take a stance like this and you call a business Women in Kind, there's got to be some subset of the population that goes, women in kind, huh? Why isn't there men in kind?
For those who may be watching the live, there's like a live video stream, Mel, and I just made like the grumpiest faces.
This is our favorite topic.
Okay, you start.
Okay.
Is it really?
Actually, it might be mine.
It's my second. I have one I like more.
I mean, is this like a softball, like that
Can
someone...
no, this is so funny. So I have two daughters, one's 7 and one is 10. And the younger one said, Mommy, why isn't there a Men in Kind?
Your very
And
own daughter.
Like, yeah, exactly. I was like, well, honey, every office that's ever been built since the beginning of time
Like
is
it's
a man
called
in
the
kind.
world.
Yeah, it's men in kind. It's called bro culture. Welcome to it. Like we are saying, just give us this one little tiny piece of the pie. You get the rest of the pie. You've always had the rest of the pie. You probably always will. Give us this little tiny piece of the pie.
Yeah.
And we do have men who are members.
He's amazing.
Amazing.
They're not excluded then.
Well,
No,
in the
yeah.
interest of full disclosure, I work there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I show up there.
Yes.
And I love it. I think it's fantastic. And I'm not intimidated or threatened by that.
No, well, you're an amazing dude.
Well, okay, let's not go too far on that.
It's the
okay,
second
dude.
time I tell you I love you.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we're all square then. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's funny. So to your point, you're right. I mean, everything has been built geared towards men. It's called cultural patriarchy. It's something that we've had since the beginning of time. So you're just asking, here's a little space for us, and some people just can't handle that still.
No, and I was on a list. I'm on a women's listserv the other day, and it just baffles my mind that we're still having this conversation.
Right.
The question was, you probably saw this, Jenna. It was, does anyone know of a good place in the Capitol to breastfeed? Guess what the answer was?
The ladies'
What,
room.
the bathroom?
Same as it ever was.
Oh,
the ladies'
dear.
room.
Really?
And that's where I had to breastfeed not pump when I was at the Denver Art Museum. I am so tired
of that
of
being an
having-
acceptable answer.
Well, yes, and like you don't get to say, why isn't there a Men in Kind? My whole life has been spent in Men in Kind, so
Right.
don't even go there with me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think another interesting point is that we've had a few people say to us, maybe it's like the a more paler shade of that question is, well, then shouldn't this just be like families in kind? Like, isn't everything you're doing just good for families? And they are right. It is. We know that what we're doing for women is actually good for everybody, but we don't, Mel and I were very conscious about not just like jumping over
Right.
women, because we also want to say like, hello, we value you as women enough to create a space for you, because no one's done that before.
Here's a space for you finally.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. That's an important step. Like, let's acknowledge that there has been a deficiency before we go to just full, almost whitewashing the entire issue, right?
Exactly.
Right, because if we skip over women and go right to families, we're like, you're still not important enough.
Right.
You
You're only
still
important
never
if
got
you have
anything.
a family.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just, we didn't want to,
exactly.
we didn't want to do that.
Yeah. I think that's fair. What would you say is, and I think I can divine this, but it's always interesting for me to hear it. What's your sales pitch ultimately? Like, why should someone come to Wink? You've given a lot of reasons, but why should they choose Wink, particularly if they're a woman, versus going to one of the competing co-working spaces in Denver?
May I take this one, Mel?
Please do.
Okay. So we really believe in this, in the name of our whole entity, Women in Kind. And we have said, here we go, women, all women. Ladies, all the ladies. Come on now. Okay. So we've said, we're investing in you. We're building a place for you. And I've used the word, we see you and we value you. I've used those terms over and over, and Mel and I do that all the time. We see you and we value you enough to build a space just for you. So our pitch is, you're not going to find this anywhere else. You're not going
Right.
to find someone who sees every pain point that you have, values you enough to want to address those pain points and to make you better. And so we're asking women, invest in us. Come be in the space with us because we built it just for you. The converse of that is if you are a woman and you're looking for a workspace and you don't come to Women in Kind, I feel you're saying this isn't a smart thing that we've built. This isn't worthwhile, or this isn't something women need. So you kind of have to step over Women in Kind and go office somewhere else. And in doing so, I believe you're sending a message that it's not worthwhile. It's not important to build places that really hold women as central and valuable.
Right.
And so, you know, anytime my colleagues or my friends or my coworkers say like, well, my office here, I'm like, okay.
Thanks. A lot.
Yeah. And do you know there's a place that recognizes and values you in such a way that like you not officing there sends a message. And I feel really strongly about that.
I do too. I mean, we have women who drive from Boulder. We have women who drive from
Really?
Parker.
Wow.
Like women seeking out exactly this. And when people go around us, it's fine as long as you have a really, really good justification for it. Because Jenna's right. Like when we talk about throwing down, to be clear, no one threw down more than the two of us.
Right.
Nobody. We said, we're going to take on another company on top of the companies we already have. We're going to throw down for you women.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%.
And that just means like we can all do something here to say this is a thing, and it's not a thing that just has to stop at workplaces. It's a thing we can take into all aspects of our lives. Is let's value women enough to invest in them. And then as women, we can start to demand an investment equal to the contribution that we make to the economy, which is an incredible one.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when we say this, Mel and I aren't just like, you got to come office with us. We're saying, we're kind of talking about a larger philosophy. Like if there's something that's investing in women and really seeking to make women successful, to kind of circumvent it means,
Right.
you know, you're just not like, what's happening there? Well,
You were either intentionally or unintentionally sending a message, and one that may be counter to your own goals.
right.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, one thing that, you know, Jenna and I talk about a lot is, you know, if you really care about parity or equity for women, then you will march into your bank and you will ask how many board members are female. And I'm not saying they have to be 50%, even though we're 51% of the population. Throw us a 1/3. How about 1/3? How about 1/3 of the C-suite
Right.
is female? And if you say that you care about women in the workplace and you're not willing to ask that question,
Or put your money where your mouth is and turn around on your heel and walk out.
Exactly.
If you don't get a good answer.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, presumably, given what you're talking about, you don't have your eyes on just one building. Then is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say.
I think that's fair to say, John.
Okay. Playing it awfully close to the vest there. That's okay. But given the issues of cultural import that you're talking about here, I would be very surprised if this stayed at the one location, and if it were solely a co-working space going forward. Is that?
Yeah. I think
Am I
so.
assuming correctly?
Yes. My goodness. You're an oracle.
All right. Well, in the interest of making sure that we do this properly, give us the plugs. Where can people find you? Where can they find Women in Kind? Plug away, please.
Women in Kind at womeninkind.com. We are located at 3899 Jackson Street in Denver, Colorado,
You
just
can
north
always
of City Park.
come in for a tour and kind of check it out. We even say you can come in and like work for free for a day and just like get a sense of the vibe and do the whole
get the
thing.
atmosphere.
Really encourage people to do that. Mel and I are also, you know, really, of course, involved with the Broadview Denver, and check that out as well. And that has a lot of synergy with Women in Kind.
That's fantastic. This has been a fascinating conversation.
Yes.
I appreciate the work that you're doing very much. Jenna, Mel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
for
so much.
having us.
Thank you. And thank you, Jon Ekstrom, for bringing your great guests along with you today. And we'll have more from you this week looking at unique partnerships as well.
I will be back again. Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.